ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतस्य सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घायते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरं। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So, having seen the first 4 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, today we are entering chapter 5 to have an overview of chapter 5. Chapter 5 is called Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Srila Prabhupada has titled it Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So, this chapter, from the very name of the chapter, we can understand that this will contain inputs from both chapter 3 and chapter 4. In chapter 5, we will find. Because Karma Yoga is getting further explained in chapter 5. And this chapter is a relatively shorter chapter in the sense that there are 29 shlokas in this chapter. So, just to have a section-wise view of the chapter, the first 6 shlokas of the chapter deals with, again, Nishkama Karma Yoga being easier than Karma Sannyasa. That is, the first section of the chapter deals with that. And the second section, from 7 to 12 shlokas, discusses how to perform Nishkama Karma Yoga. And then 13 to 16 shlokas, it is speaking about the platform of knowledge and knowing the 3 doers. Who are the 3 kartas, So, that is being discussed by Krishna. And then from shloka 17 to 26, speaks about liberation or mukti by focusing on the Paramatma. And shloka 27 and 28, Krishna is giving a preview of the next chapter, which is chapter 6 called Dhyana Yoga. And then the very last shloka of this chapter, chapter 5, is the 29th shloka that we call as the peace formula shloka. So we will go through them one by one. So this chapter speaks about outwardly performing all actions, but inwardly, renouncing the phala or the results of that action. And the intelligent man who is purified by the fire of transcendental knowledge, he is the one who attains peace, detachment, forbearance, spiritual vision and bliss. This is in one sentence this chapter. Okay? And now we are coming to the beginning of this chapter. What is happening here is that Arjuna's confusion is still not gone away. Okay? So, in the first shloka of the chapter, you will find Arjuna's confusion. And why is Arjuna confused? That also we should know. Arjuna is telling Krishna, hey Krishna, first of all you ask me to renounce work. Then again you recommend work with devotion. So Arjuna is confused. Renounce work or work with devotion. Why is he confused like that? Because in the chapter Transcendental Knowledge, that was chapter 4, Krishna glorified jnana also. He speaks about action in inaction, inaction in action. Right? And also, Krishna glorified jnana and renunciation. That is, jnana and vairagya together. And then, in the end of the 4th chapter, he ordered Arjuna, you fight. You see? So now Arjuna is thinking, we will also be thinking whether I should gain transcendental knowledge, whether I should renounce, whether I should work, right? So that is the question Arjuna is also asking here. But Arjuna is more clear in his thought process compared to us, because he has got now 2 very clear points out of this whole discussion until now, which is, should I renounce work or should I work with devotion? And this is because simultaneously stressing the importance of work in devotion and inaction based on knowledge, Krishna has managed to perplex Arjuna. So, Arjuna is thinking sannyasa or renouncement in knowledge should be altogether free from all kinds of activity. Is it not? Because if I have to renounce something in knowledge, I gain knowledge, then I renounce the worldly things. That means what do? I don't do anything. Right? How does work get involved there? So we must understand that it is Krishna's plan to confuse Arjuna. You know why? Because this dialogue is not only for Arjuna's benefit. Actually, it is for the benefit of all of us. So, Arjuna is also posing these questions from the point of view of a confused student. Krishna taking the position of the teacher, Arjuna taking the position of the student. Arjuna is asking, he is going forth to Krishna and saying, see, I am confused. Right? So then what does Krishna reply? Krishna replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion, they are both good for mukti. But out of these two, work with bhakti is better than karma sannyasa. So, very clear instruction is here that don't renounce your karma, but engage in karma yoga. This is the second time Krishna is actually speaking to Arjuna that you cannot renounce, and you must work. And the acharyas are commenting that actually when you work in renunciation, it will strengthen your knowledge. How does that happen? When you are working and when you are not expecting the fruits, you are not attached to the fruits, you are not attached to the results, you are not expecting the results, automatically things will become more clear to us as they stand. Because otherwise it is very difficult for me to reconcile with the fact that actually I am not the reason for all this phala, for all this result that I am getting. It's very difficult. However you think about it this way, that way or the other way, you will still think, no, there has to be some value for me, you see. So, that me value has to be properly identified. What is the value of me? Is it only merely getting some results out of our fruitive action or something more? So then, Krishna goes on to speak about the Nitya Sannyasi. Krishna says that one who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities, he is the real sannyasi. And free from all the dualities of the material world, he will easily overcome this karma bandhana and becomes completely liberated. He is a Nitya Sannyasi. Nitya Sannyasi means he is always engaged in action, but he is renounced from the fruits of the action. So, this is actual sannyasi. In the previous chapter also, we have spoken about whether becoming a sannyasi is the solution for everything. And we have understood from Krishna's instruction that running away from responsibility and becoming a sannyasi is not a solution. The actual point for us to improve, for us to go towards perfection, is to work like this. Always being renounced about the result of the action, but always performing whatever is the regulated action meant for us. And then Krishna continues to say, this Karma Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yogo Pradakbala Pravadantina Panditaha. Krishna says, this Sankhya and Yoga. Okay? He says only those people who are ignorant will speak about these two as different things. Actually, the Sankhya Yoga or Jnana and Karma Yoga, which is action in renunciation, they both involve Vairagya or renunciation. But what is better to give up? Easier to give up is work, but better to give up is results of work and continue with the work. So, Sankhya actually means, Sankhya Yoga is to find the ultimate cause. You see, what causes everything? Srila Prabhupada explains that the aim of Sankhya Yoga is to find out the Atma of the universe, and that is none other than Mahavishnu, who is the Paramatma. And in Karma Yoga also, what are you doing? Actually renouncing all the results as an offering to Mahavishnu. So, where is the difference? Actually, there is no difference. But how is this then work and Vairagya? This karma and Vairagya, how is it same? See, it's as if you are holding something in your hand, okay? And you want to pick up something else. So, what do you have to do? You have to drop what is in your hand, then you have to pick up what you need to pick up. Similarly, whatever material desires are there in our hand, we must drop it. Then we will be able to pick up that which is spiritual. So this actually simultaneously happens. That is, when I am ready to pick up the spiritual stuff, then automatically I will willingly give up the material thing. You see? So this is something that will happen very naturally in a flow of things. You don't have to push for it. What you have to push for is to try and attain that taste for spirituality. You know? So when that comes, automatically the other things we will be very easily, it will get, we will be able to give it up. You don't have to force yourself and forcefully renounce something. Because as I said, if you forcefully renounce something, it will come back with 10 times the force. You try anything in life. That is what they teach you in all those classes when you try to go there and give up some kind of addiction. So many kinds of addictions are there. Then you have all of these organizations that teach you how to give up your addictions. Right? And they all teach you various ways how to give it up by engaging in other better endeavors. Then automatically this will go. Other than that, if you try to forcefully renounce anything, you won't be able to do it. Why? Because your heart is still desiring for it. You see? So that is what we must understand. This working in renunciations means it is like that. So for that, jnana is required. And Krishna again says, whether you are coming to it by bhakti or whether you are coming to it by Sankhya, either way, when you reach there, you are able to see correctly. The right perception comes to you when you come to that stage. To be able to see things as they are. As I previously said, the The wrong way to look at things is that I am the center of the universe. You know, the right way is that when you actually look at the universe, you will find how infinitesimal I am. You know, so to get to that, currently we are looking outwardly. But spirituality means you look inward. You know, so how do you come to that? You can come to that through Sankhya, through the path of knowledge, or you can come to that by doing Nishkama Karma Yoga also. And then Krishna says, simply by renouncing all the activities, that is, if you give up karma, and if you are not engaging with the Lord in some way, you will not become happy. You see? That is, inaction, don't think that inaction will keep me happy. You cannot. Some activity must be there. Why? Because the soul is always by nature pleasure seeking, it is called. You know, Anandamayo Bhyasat. This is from the Vedanta Sutra. That the soul, me the soul, I am pleasure seeking. I want happiness. That is my basic nature actually. To be happy is my natural state. But now what is happening is that natural state of mind, that happiness is there within me. But not being able to see it correctly, that's what we mean by seeing things as they are. Now I don't see things as they are. So I don't see the happiness within me. So I am looking for happiness everywhere else. And what do I get? A little bit of happiness and then a lot of disappointment. So simply by renouncing actions, you will not become happy. So what happens is that when you become thoughtful and you engage in bhakti, then automatically that person can achieve that supreme position. That's what Krishna says. And then again, Krishna goes back to how Nishkama Karma Yoga can be practiced. You know, so Krishna says working in devotion, purifying the soul, controlling mind and senses, and then such a person, he becomes dear to everyone and everyone becomes dear to him. And such a man, although he is working, he doesn't get entangled. So like this one must work. And Prabhupada says that compassion to all the souls, Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma. Compassion to all the souls. That means a bhakta, he will have this compassion to all the souls. Meaning, he is seeing everybody as a suffering soul in this universe. So, he is able to look at everyone very compassionately. When he sees somebody acting wrongly, he feels compassionate. When a Shuddha Bhakta is seeing somebody is engaged so much in material activities, he becomes compassionate. There is a very famous incident when Srila Prabhupada, when he was in the United States. As you all know, Srila Prabhupada started the Krishna consciousness movement in America first, and then he came back to India. So every day Prabhupada would go on a morning walk, and one day in one of the American cities, I don't recall exactly where, so they were walking by, and they were walking by a golf course. You know, golf is a game that very rich people play, and it's played mostly for recreation by people who are retired, people who are nearing the retirement age, who have a lot of money, a lot of time. So Prabhupada was just watching a few people play golf, and he just stopped for a moment, and then the disciples were all very, carefully looking forward to what Prabhupada is going to say. And then with a lot of compassion in his voice, in his eyes, Prabhupada said, "See how they are wasting their life. This is the age for them. They are all retired, semi-retired people. This is the age for them when they can actually engage in some kind of devotional service. But look at them simply chasing a ball into a hole, wasting their life. So, this is actually somebody who is compassionate. That when somebody is wasting time in their life, a Vishuddhatma, he feels very, very compassionate. And then there are three symptoms of advancement actually. The topmost is the Vishuddhatma, means a soul with purified intelligence. And then there is Vijitatma, one who is self-controlled. And then one Jitendriya, who has won over his senses, Jita Indriya. So, in the following verse, Krishna is describing the Jitendriya. He says, a person who is in that divine consciousness, she is engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, everything. And he always knows that actually he is not doing anything. Why? Because the senses are engaged with their objects and he is not involved. Who is that? Jitendriya. When one is not Jitendriya, what happens? He is involved in everything. When you become a Jitendriya, what happens? Indriyas are engaged in activities, but you are not engaging yourself per se, meaning you are not attached to those activities. You see, this is how the Jitendriya is engaged in his karma, his nirdishta karma. So, how can this be done? Krishna continues to say, the one who is performing his duty without attachment, surrendering the results to the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. You all know the lotus that grows in a pond. And anybody has seen a lotus flower and a lotus leaf, you will know that although the lotus leaf remains in water throughout his life, you will never find water sticking onto a lotus leaf. So Krishna is giving that example, that if you are working, if you are performing duty without attachment, you will remain sinless, just like the lotus leaf is untouched by water, even though it is in water. You see, because they have a waxy surface. The lotus leaf, it's very waxy, water will glide off it. Same way, when we become waxy with renunciation, all sinful reaction will glide off. Very simple. You see. So, then the question comes, if I am detached and I know that I am soul, I am Atma, I am not the body, then why should I work? Correct. So, Krishna explains that the yogis abandoning attachment act with body, mind, intelligence and even with the senses only for the purpose of purification. And one becomes purified by the detached work one performs. Because again, coming back to the point that inaction does not get you anywhere. Inaction does not purify me. At best, inaction will keep me at status quo. I can remain where I am. But even that is impossible because the mind will keep working and I will fall from my existing position only. The chances are always of sliding down. As we all know, the slide downwards is far easier than the climb upwards. So, inaction actually will cause you to slide down. Acting without attachment will help us to climb up. And then, if you are attached and if you are unattached, a steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me, Krishna says. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Again and again, Krishna is repeating these points. We have heard this already in the 3rd chapter. Again, Krishna is repeating in the 5th chapter. So, as I previously said, It is not that Krishna does not have another subject matter to discuss, but because this subject matter is so important that the Lord is repeating in different ways so that it goes into our intelligence. Our Acharya Srila Prabhupada used to say, repetition is required because the intelligence is dull. You see, even when we were going to school, we always remember that the teacher would make us repeat many things. Why? So that it sits in our head, in our brain, wherever it is. Okay? Wherever your intelligence may be. So, Krishna is repeating certain things because it is very, very important for us to keep it in our heart, take it into our heart, keep it there and act on it. That is the reason for repetition. Not to think that why would Krishna repeat something? It's because it is so important. And why this karma is discussed in 2 chapters? Because for the majority of the people, they have to go through this and then only reach that position. Why Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna? Because he is the right person. If Krishna was going to discuss Bhagavad Gita with Narada Muni, what do you think? All of us would read and say, oh, this is only for Rishi Munis, this is not for you and me. So Krishna speaks to Arjuna, who is a prince, who is a warrior, who is in a responsible position, who is a grihastha. So, all these things are done with a purpose. We must understand that. And then Krishna continues something that was discussed in the 3rd and 4th chapters regarding who is the Karta. We spoke about Ahankara Vimuthatma Karta Aham Iti Manyate. Krishna says that one who is Vimuthatma, he thinks Karta Aham, I am the doer. So actually, who is the doer? Is it the Jiva, me? Or is it Prakriti, the material nature? Or is it Paramatma? So, Krishna explains the Jivatma's role. When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of the 9 gates, neither working nor causing work to be done. So, again, renunciation of action at the platform of the mind. At the mind level, when you are renouncing all actions, you can sit in this Navadvara Pure Dehi. The body is called Navadvara Pura because it has got 9 gates. I am sure all of you can count the 9 gates of your body. Can give you an example, one indication, 2 nostrils, 2 gates, 2 ears, another 2 gates, 1 mouth, another gate. So, you can fill in the rest. So, when I am living in a Pura, in a city, do I think I am the city? Or do I think that I am sitting in the city? Correct? So, the renouncer, the sannyasi understands that I am not the city, I am sitting within the city. Right? And in such consciousness, what is the result one will get when one develops this? Krishna says, the embodied spirit, the master of the city of his body, does not create activities. Nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of nature. Now Krishna says, because he is sitting with this consciousness, actually the modes are only acting. He is not acting. How wonderful this is turning out to be. So, how do we understand this? We understand it like this. We are there. The modes of material nature, the Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna, Tamo Guna is there. But ultimately, who is the controller of this Prakriti? We already discussed. That is Ishvara, controller. And who is that? Paramatma. So, if Paramatma is doing everything, then for my papa also Paramatma is responsible. So then why should I receive all this papa phala? Correct? Some sinful reaction only, why should I receive? Because here Krishna is saying Prakriti is acting. That means I am not the karta. Right? I am not the karta. Prakriti is the karta. Prakriti is controlled by Ishvara, Paramatma. So who is responsible? Paramatma. So this is a misconception. And to clear this misconception, Krishna says, nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of ignorance which covers their real knowledge. When one is enlightened with knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in daytime. So Krishna says, only because of our ignorance, the darkness that has enveloped us due to our ajnana, we are thinking like this. The moment sunlight enters, automatically everything can be seen as it is. So, how to understand that this knowledge leads to liberation? See, there are three doers, correct? Three kartas are there actually. First is Jiva. I am karta number one. And if I have knowledge, then I realize that all the bodily activities are automatically carried out by the three gunas. So, modes or the three gunas are the karta number two. And actually, but these three gunas, they actually they are material, they are inert, jada, right? So, simply they carry out something that is desired by me. So, the modes are acting or the gunas are acting, but who is desiring? I am the person, I am the entity who is desiring, and who is sanctioning that? Paramatma. You see? So, Paramatma is the karta number three. So, now you understand why we have to take all the papa phala? Because Prakriti is acting, Paramatma is sanctioning, I am desiring. Root cause is my desire. So, I have to take the baggage. When I get knowledge, I will stop this desire. I will channel this desire elsewhere. I become free. So, when one's intelligence, mind are all fixed in Krishna, then he will completely become clean because he is fully knowledgeable. And once you are above this material platform, how you look at things, Krishna explains that also. Krishna speaks about the Pandita, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastine Sunichaiva Swapakecha Pandida Samadarshina. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, they see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, and a dog and a dog eater. So, how is it that he is seeing everybody equal? A Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. This verse says that Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. By Vidya you get Vinaya. Very nicely correlated by Krishna. Vidya should bring Vinaya. Sampanna, you will become very, very humble. So, one very good way of judging our knowledge is by knowing the level of our own humility. The more humble you see somebody in spiritual practice, he will be more knowledgeable. Because real knowledge will bring real humility. False knowledge will make you puffed up. You will become ahankara will increase. But real knowledge, automatically you will become humble. So, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. So, one who is virtuously humble. Humility is actually a great virtue. We must understand that. But it's totally underscored in the present scenario in this world, If somebody is humble, automatically is considered to be a doormat, he has an inferiority complex and whatnot and whatnot. But humility, simplicity, these are all virtues for spiritual life. So he is able to see the Brahmana, the cow, the elephant, the dog eater, everybody same, in the sense that he is able to see the Paramatma in each of these entity. So in that level, he does not distinguish. But you must also know that that does not mean that I will entertain a wild fox or a lion or a tiger in my bedroom. No, that is called discrimination. This is called, this Samadarshi means he is able to see that Paramatma is there in all the living entities. So he becomes very, very humble. He becomes Samadarshi. He can see the presence of Paramatma everywhere by dint of his knowledge. You see? So those whose minds are established in equanimity, so they have already conquered Janana Marana. And they are flawless like Brahman, Krishna says. He is now here speaking about the Brahmavadis, So the Brahmavadis is everything situated in Brahman. The Paramatma Vadis is everything. He can see the super soul, the Paramatma at work everywhere. And the Bhakta, the Bhagavad Bhakta can see that everything is happening by Krishna's sweet will. So this Brahmavadi and Paramatmavadi and the Bhakta, they are able to see things as they are based on their levels of understanding. So then he continues to speak on how when one is focused on Paramatma, he becomes eligible to become liberated by focusing on the Paramatma. Because Paramatma is situated, the Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart. And when one is always concentrating, when one's Dhyana Purusha is that Paramatma, the Supreme Person sitting within us, then automatically that consciousness that we develop will bring us purity. And that purity is what makes us eligible for mukti or moksha, as we call it. And then Krishna continues to say, this is how one must become pure. And then this sensual desires that we get, it is actually a greatly foolish endeavor to engage them. So Krishna says that yehi samsprashaja bhoga dukkhayone evate adyantavata kaunteya nateshu ramate buddhaha. That is, Krishna says that an intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. You see, anything that is giving some happiness in this world, very short-lived. We discussed this previously also. And they also become a source of our misery later on. The same thing that gives you happiness now will give you misery later. The same gulab jamun at the age of 20 that gave you so much of happiness when you are 50 and diabetic, it gives you the greatest misery. Very simple example. You can correlate so many other things in your life. What gave you happiness 20 years ago and today is a source of distress. You ask many parents, they will say, the child when he was 3 years old, he was such a source of pleasure for me. Now he is 20 and such a great source of stress for me. So this is how the material world works. It gives you some happiness for some time and then it starts giving you misery. So Krishna is saying that, so this, if you are giving too much of importance to these sensual things, and if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, then he is well situated and he is happy, Krishna says. So then the question comes that how long do we have to tolerate this material desire, the sense, engagements, the desire for engaging the senses. How long do we have to tolerate them? And because the material senses, they keep on giving you so many ideas, and the acharyas, they compare it to itches, that is, right from childhood they teach you, when something is itching, they will say don't scratch. You know why? Because you scratch a mild itch, it gets worse, and then eventually you will lose your skin. Until then you will keep scratching. So all these material sense activities are like that. So the way out for this given by the acharyas is that you ignore them, and this gradual development means you will maybe gently scratch a few times, and then gradually you learn to ignore it. And from this verse, Krishna is saying that this sense attraction has to be tolerated till death. It is not going to go away so easily. Many people will tell you that these things are all not meant for young people. You should try and do all these things when you are old. Don't try to become a ripe fruit before you actually ripen and all those things. So that is not true. Whether I am 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, the me sitting within is of the same age, you see. So the senses, they keep on telling me the same things. The external look may be different, but the idea of the senses is always to keep on getting some sort of enjoyment. And even when the body is not cooperating, the sense will want to enjoy. That is why we will find that when you cannot even see properly, but you will still sit next to the TV and listen to what's going on there. You know why? Because his senses want that engagement. So, best thing is that you have to tolerate. Titiksha. This is one of the swabhava of a sadhu is titiksha. Means he tolerates. Because he understands that we have to tolerate it. And in this verse it says that, throughout life, when one is nicely tolerating and doing activities with renunciation, then he will live happily, and then he will also become eligible for moksha. So that is our idea, means we should learn to tolerate. And unless we can find that happiness from within, we cannot give up these external things. So as we find happiness in our spiritual endeavor, automatically our link, our connect with these material things will go. You see? So then we may think, okay, the mind is, I am engaged within, I am finding happiness within. But is it all so easy? Throughout the life I must tolerate. Then I must look within myself and I must find happiness. Is it all going to happen so easily? So Krishna gives a nice reassurance also to us. He says that those who are free from anger, those who are free from material desires, and when you become self-realized, self-disciplined, and when you are endeavoring for perfection, Krishna says, you are assured of liberation in the very near future. Krishna says, moksha is close for somebody who is constantly endeavoring. This is also the instruction of the acharyas. They say, utsaha, nischaya, dhairya. Three things. Utsaha means you should have enthusiasm. Nischaya means you should have determination. Dhairya means you should have patience. So, in all our spiritual endeavors, we should have these three things very importantly. We should be enthusiastically doing it. Very enthusiastically we must study the Bhagavad Gita. Very enthusiastically we must chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And we should have determination that I will do this, And then you should also have patience, because it is not going to happen overnight. Like today we have this session. We may go back and look at a few verses and try to do something. Or while the class is going on, we may feel that, okay, once this is over, tomorrow I should sit and go through this and try to, find this, find that and the other things. But it may not happen. So, but enthusiasm we must maintain, determination that if I want to do something in my spiritual endeavor, I will do it. I should be determined and I should be patient for the result to come. Especially when you are treating the cause of a disease, it always takes a longer time. If you are simply treating the symptom of a disease, you may think it has gone away. In allopathic medicine, they have the symptomatic treatment and then they have the causal treatment. You have some, blocked up sinus like I have now. So you will have a headache. So when you go to the doctor, he will treat you with an antibiotic that is a cause. And then he will give you a painkiller for the symptom, which is a pain. Right? So we have a cause. Cause is what? Our desire. What is the symptom? All the senses acting funnily. That is a symptom. So simply if you stop or forcefully stop the senses acting in all funny manner, won't work. So you should have that antibiotic, and that takes time, you see. But if you simply take the painkiller, what will happen? Tomorrow the pain is back again. Once the painkiller wears off, the pain comes back. Because the cause is not it, the root cause you have not treated. So, this whole process of spiritual endeavor is to treat the root cause. This is called, Acharyas call it Bhava Roga. The disease of materialism is there in us. This is what we should get rid of. This takes time. But Krishna says, if you are self-disciplined, if you are self-realized, and if you constantly endeavor to become perfect, then quickly you will get liberated in the near future, Krishna says. And then towards the tapering end of the chapter, Krishna speaks 2 verses about how an Ashtanga yogi does this. That is because he is giving an introduction to the next chapter, which is called Dhyana Yoga, where we will discuss this Ashtanga Yoga in detail. And the closing shloka of this chapter, I just want to dwell on it for a little while, because that's a very wonderful shloka in the Bhagavad Gita. That is what, as I told you in the beginning, that's called the peace formula. And what is that peace formula is? Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam jnatva mam shanti mrichati. The whole world is looking for peace. You are looking for peace. I am looking for peace. Many times we say, I just want to be peaceful, right? And somehow I am not finding it. And we have nations wanting peace. We have the United Nations trying to make peace. But they are simply cutting everything down to pieces. There is no PEACE. Peace is not, looks so elusive. Correct? That's because they don't follow this formula. And what is this formula? Jnatva Shanti Mrichati. Jnatva means by knowing. Shanti Mrichati means you will get. you will get shanti, you will get peace. And what is that? Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarva bhutanam nyatva. And who is that? Mam. Krishna says, knowing that I am Bhokta. Bhokta means enjoyer of what? Yajna tapasam. I am the enjoyer of all the yajnas and all the tapas. And I am Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. I am the super Maha Ishwara of Sarva Lokas, of everything. And I am also Suhridam Sarva Bhutana. Suhrid, that word means friend, well-wisher. So Krishna says, if you know me to be the enjoyer of all your yajnas, means your sacrifices, all your penances, your tapasyas, and if you understand that I am Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, I am the Maha Ishwara, I am the supreme controller, and also I am Suhurdam Sarva Bhutanam, I am the friend of every living entity. If you know these things, you will attain peace. Very simple. And looking into this further, the Suhurdam Sarva Bhutana. As I said, Suhrud, the word means well-wisher. And we always speak about how we are well-wishers of our friends, our relatives, our whatever it may be. You name it, we are well-wisher. Okay? But delve deep into yourself and see how well-wisher we are for others. Or somebody who I consider a friend, you will always find that when it comes right down to me against him, it is always me first. We are all like that. Correct? But for Krishna, because we are all his children and he is the supreme father, and he is not in competition with us for anything. You see? So he is always our well-wisher. Whereas we, in competition with somebody, or somebody feels in competition with us, he used to be a well-wisher, now he is no more a well-wisher. Maybe because you ran ahead of him. Or you were a well-wisher of somebody, and when that somebody ran ahead of you, you are no more his well-wisher. So in this world, well-wishers will turn to ill-wishers, turn back again to well-wisher, then to ill-wisher. These things will keep happening. But Krishna is that well-wisher who is always wishing well for you. See? So, Krishna has now summarized many topics discussed thus far, and he has put them into context of getting moksha. And this Bhoktara, that is Bhokta, I am the enjoyer of all the yajnas. So even if a yajna is performed for a particular devata, actually that devata is trying to please Krishna, who is the supreme, Sarvadeva Mayo Hari. He is the sum total of all the devatas. He is the final enjoyer of all the sacrifices. And all the tapasyas that we do, all the tapasya that a jnani is doing, for everything Krishna, it is all meant to reach Krishna. And for everybody, he is the well-wisher situated in the heart and always ready to guide. So that Krishna we should turn to. And by turning to that Krishna, we will attain peace and lasting peace. Not that some peace that is there today, gone tomorrow. No. Lasting, everlasting peace we will attain by understanding this. So, this is how the 5th chapter is concluded. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.